The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Good morning and good evening, everyone. This is the Agile Coaching Network. The Agile Coaching Network is brought to you by the Agile Alliance. The Agile Alliance, if you're unfamiliar with who we are, we're a nonprofit organization that's supported by members. And that member support is how we are able to fund things like the Agile Coaching Network and other different programs that we run as an organization. And I do want to give a shout out to some of our Cornerstone members. You know, we have a couple of new Cornerstone members that joined us this month. AT&T and Boeing are now a part of our Cornerstone membership, which their contributions, of course, help us to, along with the other members, help us to perform the mission that we do about promoting Agile, looking to go move the ball forward to make it a much more efficient and sustainable and humane way of working. And that's our goal. And of course, within that, you know, our 11,000 members that we have worldwide are also financial sponsors of this program as well. I want to give a shout out to them because, again, we could not do that without them. Please, if you are listening to this and you want to help us, you can go over to agilealliance.org and get, make your, membership dollars, that's $49, I think, right now for the annual membership. And that comes with a few perks, like we have a couple of different events that are just member-rated only that you get, free access to. So today, what I'd like to talk about, and this was something that was coming up in Agile 2021 a bit, and as everyone knows that in the Agile principles, we have this line which basically says that we promote a sustainable pace, but it's contrasted to that, that the sponsors, the developers, and the users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. And for those of you who have been working from home, like most of us, as you know, that work is really close. I mean, it's not like before where I would have to go get into my car, have my warm up period of time of I'm thinking about what I'm going to do for the day, which was on my drive in. I would do my day, and then of course I have to exit the building and go home. Try not to open up the laptops. That's a whole different other thing. But theoretically, you have that decompression zone that's there, and then you're basically done for the day. Having work so close, guess what? You are having work there constantly. I mean, literally, it's down my staircase. I am at work, and I know that I probably touch my work keyboard probably too much, and sometimes that promotes into burnout. And so when we talk about this sort of constant pace of development and to be able to maintain that in an indefinite period, the first thing I got thinking about is sort of this running model of, a runner being able to maintain a pace. And if you've ever ran before, or you as even recreational or as a sport, that there's a number of things that affect your pace, and that's either the climbing resistance, the running resistance, the air resistance. All of that comes into play when you are trying to just say maintain a certain pace per hour, and being able to do that in order to do your marathon or to do your 5K or whatever it is that you're going for. You're shooting for consistency through that. And I think the same sort of holds true a little bit for the developer, and the ability for us to develop anything, and this is regardless of software or any work product that we have. I think that there's a number of things that affect this notion that we can continuously work on everything like at a consistent manner, consistent velocity, and those things. And so I threw up a couple of things that, as I was thinking about it, taking the other model and thinking about it in contrast to how we do this as knowledge work, But there are things like requirements resistance, meaning I don't have the requirement fully baked, and therefore that slows my pace. The whole capability resistance, meaning my skills might not be up to the task, meaning it might be the first time that I have ever touched, say, that piece of middleware code or that particular financial spreadsheet or something that is just totally new to me. And so then I'm going to be pushing against my capacity, my capability, in order to be able to do that task. And then the last thing is just the organizational resistance. We all have political systems and structures within our organizations, and then resources, whether that be the dollars or maybe how slow my laptop is or whatever that might be. It might be server capacity or something out there. All affect the ability that eventually rolls up to the magic number, as Agilists, as if we're measuring velocity or throughput or any of those things, they all have an effect. So the kickoff question for this, and I know that was a little bit long-winded, but I wanted to kind of set the pace for what we wanted to go talk about. What is the key to maintaining this pace indefinitely? And is this realistic? I'm going to throw it into the middle part of this question here. If you think it's realistic, what's in your toolkit? What are you currently using in order, as you coach teams to reach this potential? What do you introduce? How do you introduce it? How do you help to look at this? And then on the extreme, which is we all get excited about going towards the goal, how do we manage and monitor to make sure that we're not burning people out? So that's the kickoff. Let's see, Hendrik, did you want to kick us off on this?
Yeah, exciting topic, because this is one of those things. I remember the good old times where we had the waterfall projects and these wave movements in the organization. Like a project starts, everybody's pretty cool and learning and doing stuff and so on, and the delivery deadline is far in the future. And then you approach the delivery deadline, the stress is increasing because you are about to miss it. Then of course you miss it, the stress peaks. Everybody is hectically trying to do whatever they can to make the customer still happy. And then you finally deliver, and then you take a deep breath and you relax again. And then Agile comes and we say, let's have a sustainable pace. And what I have seen, not only in the company I work for, but also in other companies, is that, okay, cool, let's have a sustainable pace. We have sprints. And then after 3 years, you have been sprinting and sprinting and sprinting, and people are feeling so exhausted by this. So there are a couple of side effects of working with this. And I think the most important learning that I have around this is constant pace shouldn't mean boring. And boring means you should not do all the time all the same things. You need to have maybe even sprints where you plan for relaxing things, not in the sense that we are not going to do anything, but you can have sprints where you are just learning or innovating, or where you work on a pet project where you say this is important, or some maintenance, or anything like this. So I think that keeps the whole thing interesting, and you need to bring in some variation to keep it interesting and not burning out people. And the other thing that I found being very important is make this part of your retrospectives. I think, again, we are coming back to this over and over again, but for me, retrospectives are so important to also keep in on the radar. Is our pace sustainable? And if not, what can we do? How are people doing? And that, of course, requires the famous safe environment, so people do speak up on things. But those are maybe the two things that I would bring into this discussion. Make it entertaining, or at least not boring, and retrospect on what can we do to keep it sustainable.
Thank you for that. What's interesting is you were talking about some of the waterfall work. Somebody was talking about theory of constraint not long ago, and I thought about, I tend to be the procrastinator, and sometimes, I schedule 30 an hour, an hour to do a task, and I literally kind of wander around a little bit until I get to the last 15 minutes, and then that's like push and then get it done. And I think to myself, well, actually, how long did the task really take? Was it actually an hour, or was it actually only 15 minutes? So, Jörg, your microphone went live. What do you have on this?
Yeah, one thought, definitely constant and sustainable are not necessarily the same thing. And if you talk about constant, it's again, what time frame do you look at? Is it a sprint like in Scrum of 2 weeks, or do you want to be rather constant across longer time frames? That depends a bit on what kind of work you're delivering and where you're going. If you're going into the unknown, then probably there's nothing really constant about your speed. It's much more about sustainability, not rushing too much headlong into exhaustion in the beginning, so that you have enough concentration left to bring this really to a good conclusion. And that's a bit, don't do it boring. So even if you run a marathon, you don't keep an absolutely constant pace as the best solution. And again, the question of practice, if you're running, and that's your metaphor, no runner is running forever. There's always a break, just to let training effect set in and things like that. So find places where you can do this and times that you can do. It's totally okay to measure them and have a look, how long do I need to recover? That's what athletes do as well. So it's a bit a part of your training effect and seeing how fast can I go, how fast can I recover, how fast can I go. That might make a lot of sense if you do small things directly for customers, because then you do a very fast feedback cycle. Then you really let that settle in with the greater community of customers. Then you again do the next big thing. So not necessarily always just the constant boring thing. And otherwise, just as Henrik said, talk about what is keeping you back, what is eating your energy, why is it hard to run, should you change your shoes, and things like that in the retrospective. That is probably the most important thing against burnout, because if people stop contributing at that point, then they're in real danger. And it's a good chance to detect and help and slow down, because otherwise there will be no sustainability anymore anyways.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Deanna.
So when I when I hear questions like this, I you know, it helps to be an old person, I guess. This, well, not always, but in this kind of instance, it helps to be an old person. I remember where this principle came from, and you know, originally it came out of extreme programming, and where that had a, if you go back to the early books, talked about a 40-hour work week. So the whole idea of sustainable pace had to do with helping to move, I mean, taking care of developers, right? And taking care of the people who are building the software, moving them out of this situation where they were sleeping under their desks, working 70, 80-hour work weeks, and then having crunch time and things. You know, there was a phrase called the death march part of the project, which was when you got to the end and you saw the deadline looming, and now we're all gonna, you know, work weekends and all of those kinds of things. And the realization that that kind of overwork actually inhibited people's ability to build a quality product. We tend to, you know, when we're working, when we're too tired, we are inserting defects. And then the rest of the team has to be checking for that and looking for it and deal with the build breaking and all of those kinds of things. So the whole idea behind sustainable pace was to find a work cadence that would allow us to keep making progress without burning ourselves out, right? And so the idea that constant pace is now causing burnout is sort of an antithesis to that principle, right? If we're getting burnout, we are not working at a sustainable pace. And yeah, it's what?
Okay. No, go ahead.
Well, and so, you know, there's a somewhere in here is a misunderstanding of the principle. And the other thing that I've heard, the other comment that I've heard about this that got reflected in both what Hendrik and Jorg were saying as well, is this idea that if we sprint, we're never going to get there. And so one of the things that's in my toolkit is this idea that comes out of complexity theory, which is called the Baker's transform. And that is when we are working in complex systems, we need to, they take it from kneading bread, right? You stretch the bread and then you fold the bread back. And we see this in all kinds of complex systems. We breathe out and then we breathe in and then we breathe out. We can't breathe in again until we breathe out, right? So the constant pace has to do with what is our cadence for exertion and rest, exertion and rest, exertion and rest. And what do we need to do to be able to keep, we'd like to keep breathing for as long as we possibly can, indefinitely, you know? So we have to breathe out and we have to breathe in order to do that. And so when I think about that, constant pace, if we are taking that to mean exert indefinitely, then we've got the wrong idea. If we're talking about how do we create the system where we are able to reflect, tune, and adjust occasionally, right? We work and then we reflect, and then we work and then we reflect. All of these things are a part of how we go along. And so how we manage burnout is we find the right balance between how much do we as a team, how much do we need to be working, and where do we need to be going and being with our family, with our avocations, our hobby projects, the other things that we do that refresh us so that we can come back and then we can come back and work again. And then we can come back and work again. And if we go home at the end of the day, at the end of a regular day, then we aren't going to be staying late and working when we're overtired and putting defects into our system. So that's the way I think about it, is, we manage burnout by not pushing people at a burnout pace, and by making sure that as leaders, when 5 o'clock comes, if we're visible to other folks, whatever that visibility looks like, we either literally or metaphorically close up our desks and say, I'm going home now. I think the rest of you should go home too. Go be with your families, do the other things you do, and come back tomorrow morning refreshed. Come back after the end of the sprint refreshed. Come back after our big release, take a couple of days off, come back refreshed. We've got to build those in to maintain a constant pace. And it really is a sustainable pace indefinitely.
I love that. I think that, and I'll contrast back to my own history. I prided myself on my project management and really making sure that we got things shipped and delivered and all of that. And I remember one of my bosses one time said, you pride yourself of being a good project manager. And I said, yes, I do. I think I do it pretty good. I inserted that, and that was Ray 2.0 when he had a bigger ego. And he says, well, what did you do on your last vacation? And I said, I don't have time to take a vacation. And I, kind of went through about how busy we've been. And I remember the smackdown after that, which was, well, you call yourself a great, project manager, and you can't find 2 weeks out of the year for your family. And he just left it there. And I can just remember that just echoing, even to this day, it echoes in my ears about how that being the role model, being the person who is in the the person who cared most about the velocity and the delivery and all of that. Everyone cared about it, but I thought I was sort of exclusive to me to be the pusher, to push the thing forward, push myself. But really not role modeling that I was not just burning out myself, I was burning out everyone else, which is unfortunate. Sheila, are you there?
Hi, Ray. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to hear you.
This is a topic that is so near and dear for me because I have seen this run the gamut, and as a coach, it's sometimes a challenge, and the biggest challenge is that organizational resistance that you have. I think when you're talking about requirements resistance, the capability resistance, one of the things that I have done is to work with the teams to make sure that estimation is including that. And when you're looking at the team's velocities, as Henrik said, the retrospectives are very important. And just because you were able to complete what was committed to, you need to ask those questions at the retro, get that feeling of the sprint. Was it a burnout sprint? Did we work too hard to reach committed? Did we commit to too much? And make those adjustments and work toward, as Diana said, that 40-hour work week. But the other thing that I have read, and I'm not sure where this study came from, was that the optimal time of working on like software development is 6 hours a day, and beyond 6 hours a day, you actually become counterproductive. And that's where, if you're doing that, you don't get that sustainable pace because it does become counterproductive because of that burnout. And coaching the teams to make sure that they're not feeling that pressure every time, and trying to put together something that is sustainable. And it's true, sustainable and constant are different. And sustainable sometimes means creating a story for relaxation. And those stories can be learning or innovation and things that are outside of the norm. If you can get buy-in that you can do something like that. And as a coach, it's a matter of making sure that can happen. That's what I typically will do.
And when you say buy-in, what do you mean by that? I'm curious.
You need that organizational resistance to that sometimes comes into play, and you have the product group not looking at it from a standpoint of, well, that's not really helping my product, and being able to explain why this is a strategic help to the product. And if you can explain that in a way that allows for the higher levels of the product management and product organization to see that those types of things are necessary and are strategic to the product you're working on.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the reason why I brought that up is that, I find that sometimes that we tend to seek permission outside of the group a lot, not because we really need to, just because we're just in a forced habit from the old model, versus the team's empowered to go do the work necessary in order to make a high quality product. And some of the things in high quality products is we're going to also work down our technical debt or work down other things. And it's interesting that you would go to a senior manager and ask them, can I buy down technical debt? And they don't even know what the heck that is.
Yeah, no, it's not really. It's more at the product owner and the product manager who's there with the product owner saying, that's when I find sometimes having to sell the idea of that type of work and to explain why that's important, because sometimes I will experience a product owner who doesn't really think that those types of activities are valuable.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let's see, Bala?
Based on my experience, actually, over the last year, undergoing a lot of COVID initiatives, the key to maintaining a constant pace, indefinitely, I'm not sure about it because we just started our Agile journey, is about inspiring the team members. So we have like 10 teams, and then it is understanding their intrinsic motivation in terms of what makes them feel that whatever they are doing, it's the best thing they are doing it. And then once I identified that the intrinsic motivation in terms of understanding the complementary skills across the team members and allocate the stories and tasks depending on their skill and then depending on their passion to do it. And that helped in terms of having that, we are maintaining that constant pace over the last 8 to 9 months in delivering a lot of good initiatives. So that is one of the key. As I said, that the toolkit is about motivation, understanding that intrinsic motivation where the team members are not considering the external reward rather than giving opportunity for them to work on right things at the right time. So, and also making sure that when I mobilize the team, they have complementary skills. So that means each one of them support each other in their different areas. So that is how it helped me to maintain the constant pace. It was realistic, actually, as I said, that over the last 8 to 9 months, almost like 90% of the team, they were maintaining the constant pace. In terms of burnout, I think one of the previously somebody was mentioning about that retrospective ceremony where I asked them to reflect exactly what they feel in terms of the amount work, whatever they are doing it, and whatever feedback they are getting from the stakeholders doing the sprint reviews. And the reflection was very positive, and they are quite happy to take more challenges. That means that once they are inspired and once we identify that the intrinsic motivation, it is a matter for them to reach their potential, and then they don't feel that it is burnout. So that means that they keep burning more stories than, like, for example, I compared between one quarter to another quarter through establishing some metrics. So it goes like average about 5 to 10% more the velocity. So in that way, I kind of understand that, okay, so this is one of the parameters I can apply to maintain that constant pace. So okay. that is my view. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And let's go over to Elizabeth.
So I had a comment about managing burnout because this is something that my team has been working on. And I think one of the things the problem with Agile is that there's always something in the backlog. So there's always something to be working on. And we spend a lot of time measuring things completed. So it starts to seem like the only thing we value is the coding that's being done. So a couple things that my team has started to try is we're measuring things other than coding points or giving credit, making stories for things like discovery or time when developers want to take a little bit of time to dig into something. It's not specifically coding, but it gives them space in their schedule to work on something that might lead to a different outcome. We've also tried to schedule a whole sprint of reflection where we do no coding, although this constantly gets pushed off in favor of other things that come up. So I guess my question for the group is, are there other suggestions of things that we could measure in a way to kind of value non-work and prevent burnout? And I guess non-work, it's work, but again, it's not just coding.
Well, I took your statement to be like when we describe non-functional requirements, which they're still requirements, but they're just in the non-functional stage. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that rat hole on that. Let's see, Jorg or Diana or Hendrik, do you want to take a stab at that?
I can at least add one idea. And one thing is, whatever you finish, it's always a thing to celebrate. So maybe you can call on your team just to shout out what they value, thereby creating just the observance of what's valuable. And then you can start to track it and count it if it helps the team. And maybe you find that just checking how much help is going from the team to others might be worthwhile, or new discoveries in technology or product ideas or whatever. There's so many things, but go on the discovery journey and ask people just to shout out once they notice, then they will be more observant anyway, probably find more joy themselves.
Well, cool. Thank you for that. Deborah, did you have something to add to this?
Yes, I've always enjoyed these. I just can't make them every single time.
It makes us sad, by the way, because I sit and wait for you and then you don't show up. And anyway.
The young lady that just spoke just a few minutes ago, I would love to piggyback on some of the things that she mentioned, and I don't know whether it's my interpretation of it and my own personal Agile values, but I love some of the ideas that she brought up, because I agree. In Agile, it is about delivering a product. It is about getting feedback quickly. It is about delivery. But in that, we also talk about continuous learning, and we also talk about at the team's pace. And I think those two things get lost really quick when a company starts its journey, and they're just focused on getting the muscle memory of Agile down. They just want to hurry up and get their teams into that, how much stuff can we push out? When they get to that sustainable pace, they seem to shift into how much more stuff can we get out? How much more can we push down? Instead of, now that we have the muscle memory, maybe now's the time to start to allow during sprints, maybe one person per sprint, whether it's on a rotating schedule or as needed, where individuals can start doing their own continuous learning and their own reflection and their own looking into something, without feeling as if by not working on something in the sprint that they're somehow letting the team down. Because yes, it is very hard to take an entire sprint of reflection, granted. But in some of the transformations that I've been a part of, the minute that you get those people to that sustainable pace and you say, okay, what else could we think about? What else could we work on? Where do we do our own self-improvement? Almost like without fail, it's, no, if we didn't work, we would get in so much trouble for not delivering something, or even reading a book, or attending a webinar. Oh no, we can't do that on company time. And getting management to understand that that is just as important over time for the sustainability, for the joy of work, for the looking for what comes next. That's the investment, and it's really, really hard to get the team to understand that. What I've found is that introducing small bits here and there, and also pre-notifying management. Oh, by the way, there's an upcoming webinar and I'm going to try to get 2 or 3 people to attend that. Or by the way, next sprint we may have a little lower velocity because a couple of our people are going to go out and try to get some certification. That's hugely important in an overall transformation, in my opinion.
I agree, and I like the way that you frame the I'm going to inform, but I'm not going to, I'm not really requesting consent. I'm just informing you, hey, some of the team is going to be out taking the webinar because they're going to be, into this space. So I appreciate that comment. Christine, are you there? What do you have?
I I have my eye on the organizational resistance piece of R, and that's something we run into a lot as a big organization. And it was supposed to be kind of a bottom-up approach to adopting Agile. So really, to me, what that means is your finger point to the teams and say, if they can work in this way, we'll, as an organization, be Agile. And so it didn't take long for the teams to butt up against those roadblocks and say something about it to deaf ears. And so our problem with constant pace, even reaching any kind of constant pace, forget indefinitely, is that there are things outside the team's control that cause stories to roll over and all different kinds of things. And there's a very dark psychology behind all of that, where people then say, well, why am I even trying? It's hard. I've just realized that even if I'm doing like Scrum-like life cycle, it's a lot harder than it looks. And now nobody's helping us. So I'm wondering if other people have run up against that and what things you can do kind of on the team level to not just accept that these things are going on, but to, I don't know, somehow actively manage your way through it.
I can tell you in our early days, we had senior managers who they had attention deficit disorder, and they would see squirrels out the window, and suddenly those squirrels would end up on the backlog until another squirrel would come along, and then that would get thrown on the backlog. And so one of the ways that we managed it is we gave sort of exception cards, or what we would call hot lot, or sort of tickets to general managers that said that you can defocus the team twice per month. And these are your 2 tickets that you can spend to go throw something new onto the backlog. But you only have 2, and you can only spend those 2. And what we found was, since we limited them the number that they could do, is they really thought about whether or not it was critical and important to spend that ticket. So that worked well. Hendrik, you're in a big company. What do you guys do? I think you've had some of those issues before in the past.
Yeah, we have maybe all the issues that you can think of in the world. but I think the one interesting thing is, when I remember what Diana said in the beginning, she says sometimes it's good when you're old and you have a lot of history in this, and what were the original intentions. And when we hear now how human psychology strikes back on this, because I have the same experience as some of the people who've spoken up now, that people want to deliver. Actually, they want to make the customer happy. We are optimizers and maximizers somehow. And I think we need to protect ourselves from ourselves sometimes. And that's why I think it's very important, again, to run the retrospectives and make ourselves aware of this. And I think as Agile coaches, we have a responsibility in here to watch out for these kind of things. The other thing is protecting people from themselves, but we also need to see that we make a deal with the management. And there, what you said, Ray, it resonates a lot with me. You make a deal, you give them some credits, so to speak, and when the credits are out, then sorry, we cannot accommodate your special requests anymore. I like these kind of things and these kind of deals. I think they can bring us very, very far.
That's an interesting idea. I like that one. It's not just putting work in, but any kind of anti-pattern. you get 2 traffic tickets. I love it. The traffic, can I call them traffic tickets or something? I love that idea.
You can do that. I think it was really funny as the meeting where we were managing the stakeholders at, because each of the senior people had these tickets. You would see one of the people that had 2 people that both had 2 tickets, but the one senior person was trying to encourage his peer to spend his ticket on his idea, on the idea that he was suggesting, which I thought was just hilarious.
We have a market all of a sudden.
There was a marketplace for this stuff, exactly. Well, what we found was too is, and this, by the way, we had a high priority pipeline through the workload. So when we did we used a lean value stream, and we looked at and saw, well, here's the normal path that something needs to go through to get out to the customer. And then we knew if we really buckled down and we kind of threw out some of the overhead that we had in the organization, that we could actually theoretically have a 4-day throughput on certain things, certain types of work. But what we found is that as soon as they discovered that there was a high priority pipeline, that everyone wanted to shove everything through that pipeline. And so that was another reason why that ticket.
I love it. I love to gamifying some of this. I'm all for that.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, you know, there was a set of advocacy awards that the team would hand back out to management. You know, management typically hands down awards to us for delivering great things, but the team was actually, they would go up at a business update meeting, and the team would go up to the microphone where the senior manager was there, and the team would go, I'd like to give you this advocacy award for helping to support our ability to be able to create a sustainable pace, or whatever the mantra was. And they would hand them this really nice looking little award. And you just see that, you know, for whatever reason, the senior managers weren't getting that many awards. And it was just that made them kind of lighten up. It's, you know, I don't mean to equate this to, like, there's some pictures online that shows that, you know, I don't mean to equate a senior manager to a dog, but there's some pictures online where they show that if you tell a dog, you know, you're such a good boy or good girl, their face lights up. That's how these people looked. You know, it's like, oh, you did something good for us, thank you, and their faces lit up, which was really fun.
I can see that happening. That's such a great idea. Do you have more ideas? These are great.
Oh, you know, I've got a ton of them. You should just tune in monthly, and then, you know, you'll hear them all spewing out. We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to go ahead and pivot to another question really quick. And I know this one's a little bit meaty, and I always do this, and I know that all of my little co-hosts get with me later and say, Ray, why did you throw a big question out at the very end? But I'm going to go ahead and throw the big question out at the very end and take my lumps. But the question that came up is somebody asked, you know, what do you do when you have consultant developers that are working within your Agile development? And I assume that this was maybe like a Scrum or something else, because of the way that they talked about bringing things into a sprint. But what do you do if the contractor finishes their code early, and do you have them work ahead if they got done 2 days early, but, you know, the contract says that they're guaranteed a certain number of hours? What would you do? Dana, do you want to kick this one off? You don't have to.
Oh, my response is, you know, let's redesign the way this work is happening. But anyway.
No, that's valid. That's valid.
Yeah, this is kind of crazy talk here. But I also think, you know, it's possible to keep a list of research spikes that you know are going to be needed, or you know, other kinds of research, or, you know, tasks that are going to benefit the team, that you know, you could say, you know, this if we've got extra time, here's what you go work on. You know, that's kind of one approach to that. I am not a big fan of the individual contributor structure for working. I think it's anti-Agile. If this consultant developer is working as a part of a team, then their contract needs to reflect the fact that they are going to have to work as part of a team, and there's going to be a variety of kinds of work that they'll need to do that. And if you're, you know, because, you know, developers are not interchangeable widgets. It's not like you can, oh, well, I'll get 2 days of this one and 3 days of that one, and it'll be the same as if I got 5 days from this other person. No, we're humans. Part of our work, particularly in the software world, I mean, we've talked a lot over the last couple of decades about knowledge work, but in my mind, and for a while now, I've been thinking about software work as learning work. It's constant learning. It's not relying on past information or past knowledge or any of those kinds of things. There's constant learning happen. So I guess if I found myself in this situation, I would be, as the Scrum Master or coach or tech lead or anyone in a leadership role, would be looking around for what kind of learning does this team need to do, and which of those can be accomplished by a single person. And let's keep a list of that so that, we can have somebody who has some extra time on their hands out doing work ahead that will, not work ahead like it's phrased in this question, but looking ahead for how, are there risks that can be mitigated? Are there, what all is out there in our future that this person could help with?
Awesome. Jorg, your microphone went live. What do you have on this?
Two thoughts on this. The first one is probably the typical answer from myself, but I actually would ask the team. What is it that the team wants most from this 1, 2, 3 consultants to do in this time? What helps them most? And I would really make this an absolute open question. If they ever wanted to have a dashboard, or if they all agree they ever wanted to have that extension to their development environment or whatever, they're gonna get it. And in case nobody comes up with anything, then I probably would ask them, so you seem to be very fast, so make some training exercise for the rest of the team so that they learn something from you, which is code in its own right, so should not be a problem, hopefully. If the contract is so tight, then I really have to talk to my sourcing people how they could come up with something so ridiculous.
Awesome, thank you. Sheila, your hand went up. Did you have something for this?
I did. I actually dealt with this issue with a client several years back, where anytime anybody finished tasks that were assigned to them, they felt that because they were consultants, they had to assign new ones. And then at the end of the sprint, things would not get done because they couldn't finish the things that went in. In the meantime, there were other people on the team that had open work to do, and I think Diana brought this up. And so when you're working in Scrum, it's a team effort. So it's really like what needs to get done for the end of the sprint and where can you contribute, and shouldn't be this person has just these tasks. And then if there's no place that a person can contribute, there's a list of things that they can do, and some of them have already been mentioned, learning different parts of the product, learning technology things, or even looking at what kind of technical debt they can identify and analyze and come up with solutions for. So I always went that route, like down those different paths, with the first being, how can you contribute to the sprint goal?
Awesome. Christine, if you want to go, we got about 1 minute left. Do you want to add the final thought to this?
I'm all for the, I'd say if they can only code, then you got to look at the contract because of the points that have been made about, you're supposed to jump in to other stories that are not done if you're done with yours.
Okay, thank you for that final thought on this. The next event is going to be on Friday, August 27th. I hope I got that date correct. I put the wrong one on last time, but hopefully we'll be able to all get together then. Like I said, look at the Agile Alliance, agilealliance.org page, specifically on the events. That should be soon. We're going to have some new member events and other things that are coming up that you can participate in as well, and we hope that you can join those. Let's make this, the final portions of the summer of Agile, and for winter of Agile for people who are on the opposite end of the continent or the opposite end of the planet. But let's get together and let's do some more stuff together. I would greatly appreciate that. And with that, enjoy the rest of your month, and I will talk to you soon. This podcast is provided by Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org to find out about more upcoming events, as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.